Hello, welcome to Direction Northeast. I'm Isiah Quaintance. This program is a presentation of the Mass Communications Department of Northeast State Community College. This week we will be talking about a college class that hits the road in search of nature's finest. We will meet our guests and start our discussion following these messages. So, how you doing today? We're just going to talk a little bit like...
Okay, just like pretend.
Yeah. A class in the Great Tennessee Outdoors sounds like a lot of fun. New animals, plants, and terrain to discover, and you can get a college credit for participating. Northeast State Community College is offering this spring a new study in the biology department entitled Environmental Science. Joining us to talk about this course is instructor Professor Michele Glass. So how are you doing today, Michele?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So I want to ask you, how did you get into biology?
So I started college as a nursing major, actually, and realized that is not for me. But I loved my anatomy and physiology class and my microbiology class. So when I thought about what am I going to do instead of nursing, I really wanted to pursue, the sciences. I really enjoyed that. So that's where I headed.
What brought you here to Northeast State?
So I was finished with my degree, and I did biology education. So I had planned to teach middle school or high school, which really intimidated me. So when I found out there was a job at Northeast State that I was qualified for with a bachelor's degree, I was like, yes. So I applied, and I worked for probably about 7 years in the lab. So I taught lab and managed the lab. And I really liked the teaching part. So when I had opportunity to work on a master's degree, then I jumped on that chance too.
Was there anything that inspired you to teach?
Well, my mom's a retired school teacher, so it's kind of natural, I think. When I was in high school, I worked for a nursing home, and I took care of this lady named Flossie, and she was 100, and she was blind. And when I had time, she'd ask me to read to her, and I would be able to do that a little bit. And she always was like, you should be a teacher. You should not be a nurse. Be a teacher, be a teacher. So when nursing just wasn't for me, I guess that was the thing that just was my default. It just seemed like the right fit.
What is your favorite part about teaching?
The students. So I really like being in the classroom. I really like engaging with students. I do try to organize my classes so that I can do a lot of one-on-one instruction. And then I get to do a lot of student interaction with Greens Club also, which is the environmental club on campus. And I like having advisees in the office. So I just really like being able to communicate with students and help them, achieve their goal.
What classes have you taught here at Northeast State?
So when I was in the labs, I taught all of the biology labs that were taught at that time. So that's majors and non-majors biology, anatomy 1 and 2, microbiology. And then I've taught, I teach non-majors, biology 1 lecture, and I teach both anatomy 1 and anatomy 2. That's my standard.
Gotcha. So we're here today to talk about the new biology 1510 class. Describe this new environmental science course for me.
Okay, so I'm still in the planning stages, so I don't have things, completely planned out. But the goal is to take students outside on local trails, every class meeting if we can. If it's pouring rain, that's probably not a time when we're going to want to enjoy being outside. But even if it's chilly like today, we're going to have to put on the gear and get outside. So most of our class meeting time will be spent driving to the trail and being on the trail, and then driving back to campus. So that will be incorporated in the class time. And then as part of the homework, there'll be some reading assignments. There'll be some probably some quizzes or test type things that maybe we'll do online. And then we'll also be doing some journaling as part of our work. So we'll probably do some journaling on the trail during class time. We might incorporate that in as a project also as part of the out of class work. So kind of a combination of those things.
So walk me through the process of creating this class. How do you go about doing that?
So the class started actually in response to Earth Day last year. When I was out working with the Greens Club, we put together a bug hotel, which is pretty cool. It's at the gardens on campus if you haven't gotten to see it. But Dr. Flora came by and talked to the Greens Club, and she was excited about the possibility of getting students out in nature. We have this wonderful Appalachian Trail right next door, and we should explore it. And when she started talking about that, I thought, oh, I would love to be on that committee to work on those programs. And so I let her know. I was like, hey, if you have, anything I can do, let me know. And that ended up in a one-on-one meeting with Dr. Flora, which was intimidating for me. And she asked me to work on a class. So that's how we came up with using environmental science was already in our catalog. And so for me, making the class, I will, read through the textbook, the information that's offered, think about what trails we can go to and how we can incorporate those topics in with the trail activity, and think about what kind of journaling activities and so forth we can do as part of that.
So I saw that it's stated and designed for non-science majors. I thought that was very interesting. Why did you decide to focus towards non-science majors?
The big reason really has to do with transferability. So this class is a natural science general education class, and it will transfer to your four-year school. But really you want to make sure that you're transferring it as part of your degree and not as a separate class. So you also want to make sure that it fits in with your program. And so this class would not be listed for your major sciences because they're busy taking general biology and chemistry and physics in those classes. So it just doesn't fit in with their particular program. So that's the main reason. And students who are worried about transferability should check in with their advisors to make sure it works with their program. But then also I like the idea of being able to create something that's more attuned to maybe the humanities. So a lot of humanities students think that maybe scientific study is not creative, which is really not true. Maybe students who are interested in reading and writing don't think that science fits in, but there's a whole history of scientific essays and scientific writing and writing about nature or nature sketches. A lot of really famous naturalists like John Muir have been involved in writing essays on nature that can appeal across the board, not just to biologists. So I really liked the idea of being able to encourage this creative aspect in with a scientific study.
Would you maybe like to convert some students to science majors if they just find they're very passionate about it?
Of course. The only issue there would be, this would count as just an elective credit at that point. So it wouldn't, if you converted to the science major, it wouldn't necessarily help towards your degree. But really, we are all nature, and so for each of us to just kind of get in touch with that a little bit better is beneficial. So I would just be happy for people who haven't spent a lot of time outdoors, or maybe they only go outside when it's nice, just to kind of experience how a trail will change from January to February to March to April, and have that experience of being out in the cold or being out in the heat, and just to kind of feel how that changes when you're out there.
So how do you plan to inspire students to become more passionate about the environment?
I plan to take them outside, yeah. So I think, our class is set up to be every week, and we have 5-hour block just so we have time to drive to trail. I'll be looking at trails that are maybe an hour away at the most from Blunteville campus. So we need, an hour to drive out, be on the trail, and then an hour to drive back. So that's really why we have that length of time, and that's also why we'll have some out-of-class work because we're losing some class time in the transport. But I forgot the question now. what we're doing.
How do you plan to make students more passionate about the
More
environment?
passionate. Yeah, so if we're out every Thursday, for a 3-hour block of time actually being in the woods and getting to experience, different trails in the area and getting to see the seasonal changes, because there'll be a lot that changes between January and May when the class ends. Just being in that place and being able to spend the time out there, you're already somewhat interested if you've signed up for the class, and then spending the time out there should hopefully, bring that passion if it's not already there.
So tell me a little bit about some different trails you'll be going to and what you'll be doing at each of those.
Okay. So I'm still planning the class, right? So I don't have anything set in stone. One of the things I do want to do is see if the students enrolled in the class have particular trails that they might like to share, because I've not been on all the trails in the area, right? So I'll be exploring some new ones for the class for sure. There's some trails that I love, like Laurel Falls. Starting there in Hampton and walking through is great. Being able to explore, we have the rhododendron forest, and then we have some conifer forest. So being able to see the difference in the hardwood versus, the conifer forest definitely would be interesting. If we can get into maybe some creeks and do a little bit of creek exploration would be great. We might, do a class that's focused on paying attention to birds, so we might do some birding. You can pull up rocks and see what kind of organisms might be there, or look through the leaf litter. In the early spring, we'll be looking for some wildflowers for sure. So there's they're called ephemeral wildflowers, and they just show up for a couple of weeks and that's it. And it's usually when it's cold, and a lot of people don't want to be out there, but we'll be out there. So we'll be looking for those. So we'll do a variety of things like that, maybe see how elevation changes things and that sort of thing.
Do you think the geography of East Tennessee makes it advantageous to have a class like this?
Definitely, because for one, the mountains are hard to build on, right? So that's really great for us, because that leaves like all this natural landscape that's not been touched by humans. So we're able to get out there and be in some real nature, if you want to think about it like that. We can be in some forests, some woods, some creeks and streams that maybe you can't get in the flatland where it becomes all agriculture, right? So we're really lucky to be able to have that kind of landscape, I think.
Tell me, will there be a classroom portion of this class?
I don't want a whole lot of classroom portion, because I do want us to be outside as much as possible. First meeting, of course, we're going to be on campus. And we still have some walk we can do that first day, right? Because we can go out to the walking trail that's on Bluntville campus, or we can go over to the gardens and explore that. So I want us to be exploring outside as much as we can. I mentioned, if it's super downpour of rain, that's not fun to be outside. We can't see a whole lot. So, a day like that, we might transition to doing something indoors. It's possible that maybe if we have a short hike planned, that maybe we do a little bit in the classroom and then do the outside portion. So again, things are still in the planning stages, so I don't have a lot of anything concrete, but I would like us to be outdoors and active in our place as much as we can.
How will online learning like D2L be incorporated into the class?
That'll definitely have to be part of it. I mentioned that, if we're driving 1 hour to the trail and 1 hour back from the trail, there's 2 hours of instructional time that we've lost. And so we will need to incorporate that somehow. And so I do plan, we're definitely going to assign some readings, and we'll do some kind of assignment to follow up with that. And probably D2L would be the easiest way to incorporate that. And a lot of my classes now, I have my students watch their lecture as part of their homework. So that's kind of in my normal toolkit for teaching, to do some online lectures. So we may have some of that, although the textbook is pretty easy to read and pretty straightforward. So we may not need a whole lot of that to go along with it. So we'll see.
I noticed that a notebook to write and sketch with was a suggested material for the class. Will there be somewhat of an artistic expression aspect to this class?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things I'm excited about for this to be a non-major science class, because it will be, academically rigorous. We will fit the criteria to be gen ed science, but that does give us a little bit more flexibility there. And when you look at a lot of the naturalists, their work was, sketching or writing about their experience of being outside. And so I definitely want to bring that in. I definitely want art majors and literature majors and, others in the humanities to see that scientific study can be creative, that it can be, to some extent, we can have a little bit of our emotion brought into that. That doesn't always work in scientific study, but, the naturalist kind of background, I think it fits. I think we can do that and still keep it as a good science class.
I understand that food production will be a portion of this class. How will that be tied back into environmental science?
So I'm still, working with the full class design, but really it's talking about sustainability. Sustainability is a topic throughout, the entire course for environmental science. And so there's real issues with how we source our food and how our food is grown. And a lot of that has some real negative impacts on the environment. And, a lot of people are looking to, organically produced foods and things like that, which are great. But there's also concern about transporting those materials, say, to East Tennessee. So there's, a question in sustainability about should it be organic, should it be local, so we can sort of have that conversation. The Greens Club does manage 29 raised beds, vegetable beds on the campus, so we can, maybe bring something in with the gardens into the class. So those kind of things are still, maybe look at farmers markets and what those things are doing. So just kind of looking at that as a something to think about when you're doing your green practice.
Now, obviously the class will be very hands-on, but what's not hands-on, will it be more lecture-based or sort of an open discussion environment?
Well, I think that, we'll have the reading. The reading will be part of the homework, I think, and then we'll do something to follow up with that to make sure that students are doing their reading and so forth. When you're on the trail, there's just conversation that's going to happen. And so definitely there'll be times when we stop and have a conversation. Maybe I give some instruction that would be seeming a little lecture-based, but we're not sitting in chairs. I'm not in front on a whiteboard doing, a talk, right? So a talk on the trail is going to feel quite a bit different from a talk in the classroom. And then I would expect, if you're spending 3 hours on the trail with a group of people, you should start to feel some community with those people. So there should be some discussion that's happening with that too, just naturally as part of being out there.
Now, I also read that it will have a portion about environmental economics, politics, and worldviews. Will there be a social awareness aspect of the class as well?
Yeah, definitely. So when you really, I've gone through, fully the first chapter and then just kind of looked through the textbook from there. Even in the first chapter, it calls on you to look at the social aspects and to have a personal awareness about your impact on the environment. One of the beautiful things about being able to take people outside is we're going to have a personal experience with being out there every week, for 3 hours. And doing the journaling aspect really brings a personal piece to that. So there will definitely be some questions that will be asked for students to think about their personal relationship with our place, and if what they're doing is sustainable, and maybe what changes they might want to make in their personal habits to become more sustainable. So that will definitely be part of that. Yeah.
What is the main thing you hope that students walk away from this class with?
The main thing I hope is that people feel more connected to their place. So if you're here enrolled at Northeast State, maybe you're from the area, maybe you've relocated to the area, maybe you're just here for a short period of time, but while you're here, you should be connected to this as a place. And you know, there's a lot to explore, and a lot of trails are going to look similar because rhododendron forests look the same, you know, almost depending on where you go, and things like that. So we can be familiar with what East Tennessee is, right? So we can really feel that. You asked about the social awareness, and I would definitely like people to become more thoughtful about how they can live a sustainable life, and maybe what personal changes they can make to contribute back.
Can you tell me about some plants and animals that are unique to this region?
Plants and animals unique to this region? Well, if Mr. Ledford was here, Dale Ledford, he would talk about salamanders because I know he studied those. So we have a huge diversity of salamanders in the area. Unique to the area, that's a hard question. We have those wildflowers that I mentioned. They're not all unique to this area, but we have, you know, quite a few that are really interesting. We have pitcher plants, so those are carnivorous plants. We have wild ginger. We have the rhododendrons, the mountain laurels. We have lots of different types of magnolia. So a lot of people are familiar with the evergreen magnolia, but we have, their leaves will be like this big. It's so huge. It's a jungle out there, you know? And so that's really cool to get out there and see those different magnolias. We have a mountain maple that also has a really big leaf. Those things were surprising to me because it looks so jungly, but we don't think about that. You know, we don't live in a jungle, but it does seem that way. So I like plants. So those are the things that I'm most interested in, really. Just because the animals move too fast and I can't really look at them in the same way. So there's a lot. There's just a lot out there.
Why should the mass public be more concerned with nature?
Because we are nature, you know? And when we've moved ourselves inside, we forget that we're part of this whole community of plants and animals and microbes, and they're part of our health, they're part of our physical well-being, our emotional health. We're connected together. And like I said, when we move inside, we forget that. So if we step outside and see that we are, in fact, part of this whole community, then we might make some different choices. We might become more aware of how our actions might have an impact on the other members of our community.
Do you think we as humans in a society have desensitized ourselves from nature too much in a way?
Definitely. I think we're scared to go outside at night because it's dark. I think that we don't want to go on the trail in the winter because it's cold. But you put on warm gear, you're okay. I think, you know, you have to move your body to get out there, right? So a lot of us don't do enough activity to be able to go outside and enjoy that. And you know, there are things about outside. There's mosquitoes that we don't like in the summer and things like that, but that's part of our world. And when we don't go outside and experience that, we are cut off from that, and we don't see how our actions impact that part of our world.
What are some different ways that we as a society can become more environmentally aware?
I think just taking the time to see that we belong, that we are part, that we are nature, to get outside and experience our part of that place. I think just being there, we will begin to see and become more aware. And of course, there are lots of areas where we can contribute back to our natural community, and one person probably cannot do all of these things. So as you get out and you experience and you begin to look at these things, you might see, the part that you can play or the thing that you're passionate about, and then go from there as your starting point.
So going back to the biology 1510 class, how do you hope this course may grow over the future, or do you kind of just want to keep it to the one block in the spring semester?
I would be thrilled to teach the class fall and spring. We don't have a lot of students in the summer, so I wouldn't expect it to be a summer class, but I think it would be delightful to be able to offer it each semester. I don't know if that's something that would be doable or not, but yeah, I would like to do that very much.
Real quick, tell me something, tell the students something to persuade them to take this class.
Well, we will be outside, so if you like to be outside, if you don't like to sit in a classroom, this is class for you. If you are a humanities major and you're intimidated of science study, this is a good place for you to start, because I'm going to ask you to bring your skill set. I'm going to ask you to do drawings. I'm going to ask you to do some writing. I'm going to ask you to do some reading that might be in line with what you would be reading in a literature class. So I think it would be a great way for you to earn half of your natural science credits, just to get out there. If you just like to be physically active, this would be a good class for you to come out and enjoy the trail with us. Yeah.
How can students get in touch with you before the class?
So my email address is pmglass@northeaststate.edu, and then my office phone number is 354-2496. I'm in the Powers Math and Science building on the first floor. So we have a whole area of offices. I'm in B104F. So you're welcome to stop by anytime. And you might see me at a Greens Club table. So I am one of the advisors for our environmental club on campus. So that gets me out of the science building. So you might see me in the humanities building on occasion.
So thank you for coming on today. We really appreciate you. And thank you. We'll be back in just a moment to wrap up Direction Northeast.
Opportunity is waiting just around the corner. If you look close enough and stay focused, you can see the transformation. It's groundbreaking, and it's just the beginning. It's your future, and it begins at Northeast State. Wherever you're going, Northeast State Community College. We're here to get you there.
That concludes the program for today. We talked with Professor Michele Glass about a new course in environmental science at Northeast State. Community is very important to the students at Northeast State Community College, and this program takes a look at a few of the subjects they find important. Until we meet next time, on behalf of the students, staff, and faculty at Northeast State Community College, I'm Isiah Quaintance, and this is Direction Northeast.